My name is Willie Crawford, and there's still things about the war that people get wrong. They'll tell you we won because we had more tanks, more planes, more men, more of everything. And sure, that's part of it. America's factories were something to behold, turning out tanks and trucks and planes faster than Hitler could destroy them. But that's not the whole story. Not even close. I watched something in France that the history books never explained properly. I watched our Shermans, tanks the Germans laughed at, tanks that caught fire so easy they called them Tommy Cookers, tanks that couldn't penetrate a tiger's armor from the front if you gave them all day to try. I watched those Shermans hunt down tigers and panthers that should have eaten them alive, 5 against 1, and the 5 would win, every time. For years I couldn't figure it out. Neither could anyone else I talked to. The German tanks were better, everybody knew it. Their armor was thicker. Their guns hit harder. Their crews were some of the best trained soldiers in the world. So how did we keep winning? Took me decades to understand what I was really seeing. Took me until I was an old man, reading books about the war I'd lived through, talking to historians and tank men at reunions, piecing it all together. And when I finally understood, it changed how I thought about everything. Not just the war, everything. It wasn't the armor, wasn't the guns, wasn't even the numbers, not really. It was something that weighed 181 pounds and fit behind the tank commander's seat. Something invisible to the eye, something the Germans never figured out until their tanks were burning across every field in France. A radio. Now you might think, a radio? That's the big secret? That's what decided the tank war? Stay with me. Let me tell you what I saw with my own eyes. Then you'll understand why I'm still talking about this 60 years later. Summer of 1944. I was driving supply runs through Normandy, hauling ammunition and fuel to the boys at the front. Hedgerow country. The bocage, the French called it. If you've never seen it, let me paint you a picture. Imagine fields, small ones, maybe the size of a couple of football fields, boxed in on all sides by hedgerows. And these weren't the nice, trimmed hedges you see in English gardens. These were ancient walls of earth and tangled. Roots, some of them 10 feet high and just as thick. Trees growing out of them. Brambles and vines so dense a man couldn't push through. You couldn't see more than a stone's throw in any direction. Every field was its own little world, cut off from the next. Perfect terrain for the defender, nightmare for the attacker. Germans loved it. They'd hide a Panther or pack gun behind one of those hedgerows, completely invisible, wait for our boys to roll into the field, then put a shell through their side armor before they even knew what hit them. 1 shot, 1 kill. Then they'd pull back to the next hedgerow and do it all over again. Our tanks were getting murdered out there. For the first few weeks after D-Day, the hedgerows ate Shermans for breakfast. One afternoon I pulled my truck off the road when shooting started nearby. Found some cover behind a stone wall and watched the show. Wasn't smart, could have gotten killed, but I was 19 years old and stupid enough to think I was invincible. What I saw that day changed how I understood the whole war. First Sherman came around a corner where a hedgerow met a dirt road, moving careful, buttoned up, gun traversing left and right, looking for threats. Didn't matter. Bang. Flash of fire from somewhere in the hedgerow to his left. Anti-tank round caught him right in the side, the flat part where the armor was thinnest. Tank jerked like a kicked dog. Track blew off. The Sherman spun sideways and stopped dead, smoke pouring out of every hatch. Crew came tumbling out. Driver, gunner, loader, commander, all of them scrambling for the ditch, trying to get away before the ammo cooked off. One of them was limping bad, dragging a leg that wasn't working right. I could see the muzzle flash from where the shot came from. Panther, hidden behind the hedgerow maybe 100 yards out. Perfect ambush. The Sherman never saw it coming, never had a chance. Now here's what should have happened next. The Panther had superior position, superior firepower, superior concealment. The rest of the American platoon would have to come around that same corner, one at a time, into the same kill zone. The German commander could have sat there all day, picking off Shermans like shooting fish in a barrel. That's how ambushes work. That's what tactical superiority looks like. But something else happened. Something I'd never seen before. Before that first Sherman even stopped burning, before the crew even made it to cover, 2 more Shermans appeared. But not from where I expected, not from around that corner where the first one got hit. One came crashing through a gap in the hedgerow to the left, just drove right through, dirt and branches flying everywhere. The other came around a stone farmhouse maybe 200 yards to the right, completely different direction, completely out of sight of the first 2 tanks. Neither of these Shermans could have seen the first tank get hit. The hedgerows blocked everything. Neither of them could see each other. They were in 3 separate fields, 3 separate little worlds, but they knew exactly where that Panther was hiding. Exactly. They hit it from both flanks at the same time. I mean, the same second, 2 shots, bang, bang, so close together it sounded like one. The German was still traversing his turret, still trying to figure out which threat to engage first, when the second shell punched through his side armor. The Panther brewed up. Flames and smoke pouring out, and ammo starting to cook off inside, that terrible sound of a tank dying. The whole thing took maybe 30 seconds, maybe less. I sat there behind that stone wall with my mouth hanging open, thinking, how? How in God's name did they do that? They couldn't see each other, couldn't see the first tank, couldn't see the enemy position. It was like they read each other's minds, like they were connected by some invisible thread I couldn't see. That evening, I was unloading ammunition at a forward depot, stacking shells, checking manifests, trying to shake off what I'd seen. I couldn't stop thinking about it. A Sherman pulled up to refuel one of the tanks from that afternoon, I realized. I could see the scorch marks on the hull where something had gotten close. The commander climbed down, young white kid from somewhere in Pennsylvania, face caked with grime and oil, eyes red from the smoke. His hands were shaking a little. Combat does that to you. I walked over, offered him a cigarette. He took it, and we got to talking. "I saw what you boys did today," I said. "That Panther in the hedgerow. How'd you pull that off? How'd you know where to go when you couldn't see a damn thing?" He looked at me like I'd asked why water was wet. "Radio," he said. Simple as that. Danny called it in when he got hit. Didn't even wait to bail out. Keyed his mic first thing and gave us the position, distance, direction, what kind of vehicle, everything. We were already moving before he finished talking. "But you couldn't see him," I said. "Couldn't see each other. Those hedgerows don't need to see." He tapped his helmet where the headset sat underneath. "Every tank's got a radio, not just mine, not just the lieutenant's, every single one. When Danny sees something, I hear it. Murphy in 3rd Platoon hears it. Everybody on the net hears it. We don't need line of sight. Don't need hand signals or runners or any of that World War I stuff. We just talk." He took a long drag on the cigarette. His hands were steadier now. "You know what the Germans got?" he said. "Most of their tanks got receivers only. They can hear orders coming down from their commander. But they can't talk back, can't report what they're seeing, can't warn each other about threats, can't call for help when they're in trouble." He shook his head. "When their command tank gets killed, and we learn to spot those real quick, they got extra antennas. The whole platoon goes deaf and blind. 5 tanks, no coordination, just 5 guys sitting there trying to figure out what to do on their own." He flicked ash off his cigarette and looked me in the eye. "They got better tanks than us. I ain't gonna lie to you. A Tiger will kill a Sherman 9 times out of 10 in a fair fight, but they're fighting deaf and dumb, and deaf and dumb don't win against a team." Deaf and dumb. That phrase stuck in my head for the next 60 years. That's what decided the tank war, not armor thickness, not gun caliber. The Germans were deaf and dumb, and we could talk. After that conversation, I started paying closer attention, watching how our tankers moved, how they fought. And once you knew what to look for, you could see it clear as day. American tanks moved like wolves, pack hunters. When one caught a scent, the whole pack knew. They'd spread out across hedgerows and hills, sometimes a mile apart, completely out of sight of each other, but moving like they were connected by invisible strings. When one found the enemy, they all converged. When one got in trouble, the others came running. German tanks, even when they were together, they fought alone. Like lions, powerful, deadly, but fundamentally solo hunters who happened to be in the same area. One would engage while the others sat there, not reacting, not knowing what was happening. One would get flanked while his buddies 50 yards away had no idea death was coming for them too. I saw it happen over and over that summer. Saw it so many times I stopped being surprised by it. One afternoon near St. Lo, I saw a tiger burning in a field. The big one. The Tiger I. The tank that terrified everybody who had to face it. 60 tons of German engineering, 100 millimeters of frontal armor, that 88 millimeter gun that could kill anything we had from a mile away. It was just sitting there, flames pouring out of every hatch, ammunition cooking off inside with that horrible popping sound. Beautiful machine, reduced to a burning coffin. 3 Shermans had gotten it. I talked to one of the crews later. They'd spotted the Tiger from 3 different positions, radioed each other, coordinated their approach, and hit it simultaneously from 3 different angles. The Tiger knocked out 1 Sherman before the other 2 put rounds into his thinner side and rear armor. 2 Shermans for 1 Tiger, and they considered that a victory because in a fair fight, one-on-one, face-to-face, the Tiger would have killed all 3 of them without breaking a sweat. But the Americans didn't fight fair, they fought smart. They used their radios to create situations where the Germans' superior firepower didn't matter. The Tiger commander never had a chance. He was good, probably better trained than any of our boys. He had a better tank, but he was alone, fighting one battle, while the Americans fought together as a team. 1 pair of eyes against 6, 1 gun against 3. All that beautiful German. Engineering, and in the end, it didn't mean a damn thing. Now let me give you the technical part. Bear with me. This matters more than any armor specification you'll ever read. Every Sherman tank that rolled off an American assembly line came equipped with an SCR 508 radio. Every single one of the 49,000 plus we built during the war. It weighed 181 pounds, transmitted at 25 watts of power, used something called FM frequency modulation. FM was the key. Same technology your car radio uses today. It filters out interference, all the electrical noise from engines and motors and spark plugs. You get crystal clear voice communication even in the middle of combat, even with guns firing and engines roaring and artillery falling all around you. Any American tanker could talk to any other American tanker within 10 miles. Didn't matter if they'd never met before. Didn't matter if they came from different units, different divisions. The radios were all compatible. One network, universal. Covering the whole battlefield, you keyed your mic and everybody heard you. Everybody could respond. The German setup was different, fundamentally different. In a German tank platoon of 5 vehicles, maybe 1 or 2 could actually transmit. The commander's tank, definitely. His second in command, maybe. The other 3, they carried receivers only. They could hear orders coming down, but they couldn't talk back. Couldn't report what they were seeing, couldn't warn anybody about threats, couldn't call for help, couldn't do anything except listen and follow and hope their commander knew what was happening. And even the German radios that could transmit weren't as good as ours. They used AM, amplitude modulation, old technology even then. Every spark plug firing, every electric motor running, every track link clanking along created static that drowned out the signal. German tank commanders were lucky to communicate with vehicles a few hundred meters away when everything was moving. Lucky to hear anything at all in the chaos of combat. American range, 10 miles, crystal clear. German range, few hundred meters, drowning in static. American setup, every tank transmits and receives. German setup, 80% of tanks can only listen. That's not a disadvantage you can overcome with thicker armor. That's a fundamental structural problem that infected every engagement from the first shot to the last. The numbers tell the story plain. America produced over 50,000 tank radios during the war, SCR, 508S, and variants. Every Sherman got one, every tank destroyer, every armored car. Full communication capability, standard equipment, no exceptions. Germany produced about 6,000 FUG-5 transceivers for over 12,000 medium and heavy tanks. Do the math. Half their armor, half. Couldn't transmit at all. American radio 25 watts power, 10-mile range, FM clarity. German radio, 10 watts power, half-mile range when moving, AM static. Time to coordinate an artillery. Fire mission? Americans could have shells falling in 3 to 5 minutes. Target spotted, position radioed, coordinates confirmed, fire mission called, rounds on the way. Quick, efficient, deadly. Germans needed 15 to 30 minutes if the call got through at all. If the radio wasn't drowned in static, if the telephone line wasn't cut, if the runner made it through enemy fire, percentage of tanks with full two-way communication? Americans, 100%. Germans, 20%. Maybe. That gap killed more German tankers than any gun we ever fielded. I met a German prisoner once who made me understand what this felt like from the other side. Winter of '44, somewhere near Bastogne. The bulge was happening, Germans making their last big push, everything chaos and confusion. I was delivering ammunition to a forward depot that kept changing location every few hours as the lines shifted. Stopped at a POW collection point to ask directions. Bunch of German prisoners, sitting in the snow, waiting to be processed. Most of them looked beaten, tired, done. One kid caught my eye, Panther crewman, judging by his black uniform. Couldn't have been more than 20 years old. His face was still black from smoke. His tank had burned and he'd barely gotten out. Burns on his hands wrapped in dirty bandages. Eyes that had seen too much. Something made me walk over. Maybe because he looked so young, maybe because I was young too, and there, but for the grace of God, went any of us. We got to talking. His English was decent, said his father ran an import business before the war, did trade with England and America. He'd learned the language, helping with correspondence. I asked him what surprised him most about fighting Americans. He was quiet for a long moment, snow falling around us. Distant sound of artillery somewhere to the east. Finally he spoke. "You always knew," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "We would prepare perfect ambush, perfect position, perfect concealment, everything by the book. We would wait, patient, quiet, watching the approaches. And then your tanks would come." He paused, swallowed hard. "But not from where we expected. Never from where we expected. Always from the flanks, always from behind. Like you could see through the trees, like you had spies everywhere, watching our every move, telling you exactly where we were hiding." I told him about the radios, about how every American tank had one, about how we talked to each other constantly, shared everything we saw, coordinated without needing to see each other. He looked at me like I'd told him magic was real. "Every tank? Not just officers? Every single tank can transmit?" "Every single one," I told him. "Privates, sergeants, lieutenants, everybody on the same net. One guy sees something, everybody knows." His face crumbled, just fell apart. "We had 5 tanks in my platoon," he said. 5 Panthers. Best tank Germany ever built, but only the lieutenant could transmit. Only him. The rest of us," he held up his burned hands, "we just listened, followed where he went, did what he did, hoped he knew what was happening." He stopped, took a shaky breath. "The lieutenant was killed in Normandy, July. After that we had nothing. 3 days of fighting, no way to talk to each other, hand signals, flags on sticks. We tied white cloth to antennas and waved them around, trying to communicate across 100 meters. He laughed. A terrible sound, no humor in it at all. Best tanks in the world, fighting like Napoleon's cavalry, like it was 1815, not 1944. Best tanks in the world, fighting like it was 1815. I've thought about that German kid 1,000 times over the years, about his lieutenant dying and the whole platoon going silent, about 5 men in 5 magnificent machines, deaf and blind while Americans talked across miles. He wasn't the enemy to me anymore. He was just a kid, same as me, caught up in something bigger than both of us, let down by commanders who built beautiful tanks but forgot to give them voices. The Battle of Arracourt showed what this gap meant in practice. September 1944. One of the biggest tank battles of the war, and almost nobody remembers it. 4th Armored Division, Shermans, tank destroyers, light tanks. ran into German Panther brigades, fresh units, veteran crews, the tanks that were supposed to turn the tide for Germany. On paper, the Germans should have won. Panthers had better armor than Shermans, better guns, long barrel 75 millimeters versus our short 75, better optics, better range, better penetration. One-on-one, a Panther killed a Sherman most times. It wasn't even close. The fight lasted 3 weeks, running battles across the French countryside, tanks dueling in fog and rain and mud. Final count, 281 German armored vehicles destroyed. Americans lost 41 Shermans, 7-1, against superior tanks. How? Same answer. Always the same answer. When one Sherman spotted a Panther, every American vehicle in range knew instantly. Tank destroyers, vehicles specifically designed to kill tanks, got targeting information from Shermans they couldn't even see. Artillery-forward observers riding in command tanks called in fire missions that arrived while German tanks were still trying to maneuver. The Americans fought as a network, shared information, coordinated attacks, covered each other's blind spots. The Germans fought as individuals, couldn't see what their buddies were seeing, couldn't coordinate attacks, couldn't warn each other about flanking movements, couldn't do anything except fight their own private little battles and hope for the best. The better tank lost. The connected tank won. That's the story of the whole tank war, right there. The deepest irony, Germans invented the tactics that needed radios, blitzkrieg, lightning war, the revolutionary approach that conquered France in 6 weeks, that nearly conquered Russia before the winter and the mud stopped them. The whole point of blitzkrieg was speed and coordination. Hit the enemy where they're weak, move faster than they can react, concentrate forces before they know what's happening, exploit breakthroughs before they can be contained. That kind of warfare requires communication, split-second decisions, information flowing constantly between units. Heinz Guderian understood this perfectly. Father of German armored doctrine, wrote the book on it, literally Achtung Panzer, 1937. He insisted tanks needed radios, pushed for communication equipment from the very beginning, knew that the fast, fluid warfare he envisioned absolutely demanded reliable coordination. But by 1943, German industry couldn't keep pace with Guderian's vision. They were building Tigers and Panthers, magnificent machines, engineering masterpieces, without the radios to make them work together, building weapons for a style of warfare they could no longer practice. Meanwhile, American factories were churning out SCR 508s by the tens of thousands. We took Guderian's playbook and added the one thing he never had, the industrial capacity to put a radio in every single vehicle. We out-Guderian, beat him at his own game with his own ideas, executed better. By spring of 1945, the communication gap was total. Remagen Bridge, American forces capture it intact. Complete surprise. A miracle nobody expected. The Germans were supposed to blow it before we got there. Somebody failed or somebody made a choice, and suddenly we had a bridge across the Rhine. Radio reports reached First Army headquarters within minutes. Within an hour, divisions across the entire front were shifting to exploit the opportunity. Plans changing, units redirecting, the whole massive machine pivoting toward that one captured bridge. The Germans couldn't respond. Their telephone lines had been cut by American aircraft for months. Their radios couldn't coordinate across the distances involved. They were still trying to figure out what was happening while our tanks poured across in an endless stream. The Ruhr Pocket, April 1945. American columns from 2 different armies, 1st and 9th, executed a complex double envelopment surrounding an entire German army group. The coordination required was extraordinary. Timing had to be precise. Units had to move in sync across hundreds of miles. They did it through radio, just talked their way through one of the most complicated maneuvers of the war. Inside the pocket, 325,000 German troops, largest mass surrender in the European theater, trapped, partly because their own communications had completely collapsed. American fighter bombers, guided by radio-equipped forward air controllers, systematically destroyed every German signal node they could find. Field Marshal Model's final transmissions before he shot himself. No contact with adjacent units, no communication with higher headquarters. Fighting. Continues, but coordination impossible. Coordination impossible. That's what defeat sounds like in the 20th century, not the roar of guns, silence, isolation. An army that can't talk to itself anymore. Model was a good general, one of the best the Germans had. Didn't matter. His 325,000 men surrendered anyway. You can't fight a coordinated enemy when your own forces have gone deaf and dumb. After the war ended, American technical intelligence teams went through captured German equipment with microscopes. Wanted to understand what we'd been fighting, what worked, what didn't. Their verdict on German tanks? Superior. Better armor, better guns, better engineering in almost every measurable way. German metallurgy was excellent. German optical systems were world-class. German mechanical design was genuinely innovative. Their verdict on German communications, 5 years behind us, no FM technology, limited transceiver distribution, poor electrical suppression that turned every engine into a static generator. Critical weaknesses in every category that mattered. The official report put it plain. German tank communications equipment was approximately 5 years behind American systems. Critical vulnerabilities in every category. The Soviets did their own evaluation of captured German gear, looked at the same tanks, the same radios, the same equipment. When they designed their next generation of armored vehicles, they copied American radios. Not German guns, not German armor plates, not German engines, American radios. They understood what had actually decided the war. Field Marshal Keitel signed the surrender documents in May 1945. Unconditional surrender. The war was over. Someone asked him afterward what surprised him most about American military forces. He could have said a lot of things. Our air power. We owned the skies by the end. German planes afraid to fly in daylight. Our production, tanks and trucks and planes coming off assembly lines, faster than they could count. Our supplies, endless rivers of ammunition and fuel and food that never stopped flowing. He didn't say any of that. He said, you knew how to make them work together. Working together. That's what 181 pounds of radio equipment gave us. That's what 50,000 SCR 508s meant on the battlefield. The Tiger had 100 millimeters of frontal armor, had an 88 millimeter gun that could kill anything we fielded from a mile away, had crews trained to standards that would have impressed anybody. Didn't matter. Can't shoot what you can't find, can't fight a team when you're fighting alone. Germans built masterpieces, precision engineering, careful craftsmanship, superior in almost every individual respect. We built a network, connected every tank to every other tank, made the whole greater than the sum of its parts. The network won. The team won. Togetherness won. Individual excellence lost. I'm 91 years old now. Spent more years thinking about that war than I spent fighting it. The Sherman wasn't a great tank by itself. I won't pretend otherwise. Thin armor, a Panther could go through it like paper. Adequate gun, nothing special. Caught fire so easy the Germans had that nickname for it, Tommy Cooker, made jokes about it. But the Sherman was never supposed to fight by itself. And that's what people don't understand. It was designed as part of a system, part of a team. Every Sherman connected to every other Sherman, sharing what they saw, coordinating what they did, covering each other's weaknesses. 5 Shermans together, talking, coordinating, watching out for each other. They'd take down a Tiger that would have killed any one of them in a fair fight. 5 pairs of eyes against one. 5 guns coordinating against one. Tiger commander kills one Sherman, the other 4 already know exactly where he is and exactly what angle to hit him from. Wasn't supposed to be a fair fight. War isn't about fair. War is about winning. And connection wins. I still think about that German boy from Bastogne sometimes. Burns on his hands, smoke still on his face, talking about his lieutenant dying and the whole platoon going silent. best tanks in the world fighting like Napoleon's cavalry. That's what happens when you build weapons without building the network. When you perfect the machine but forget the connection. When you have the best equipment in the world and no way to make it work together. The Germans had Tigers. We had radios. Radios won. I want to thank this channel for giving an old man a chance to tell these stories, for caring about things that happened 80 years ago, for understanding that history matters, not just the big events and famous generals, but the details that actually decided things. The Sherman wasn't much on its own, but connected to its brothers, it was unstoppable. There's a lesson in that, I think, not just about tanks, about everything. Connection beats capability. The network beats the node. Together beats alone. The Germans never learned that lesson in time. We did. If you've got stories of your own, about the war, about your family, about things that deserve to be remembered, send them in. Every voice matters. Every memory counts. And if you learned something today you didn't know before, well, that's why I'm still talking. The truth deserves to be told, every last piece of it.